The first time I realized a house could feel like a courtroom was the morning my ex-husband arrived with his entire family in the driveway, smiling like they'd already won. It was a bright, ordinary Saturday in Bellevue, Washington, the kind with clean winter light and the quiet hum of sprinklers 2 streets over, because some people never stop pretending it's summer. I'd just poured coffee into my favorite chipped mug, blue glaze, hairline crack, stubborn as me, when the security camera on my phone lit up, a black SUV, a silver sedan behind it, and then another car, white, compact, the kind you rent for a weekend when you want to look responsible. I froze with the mug halfway to my lips, and there he was, Dylan Hart, my ex-husband, his shoulders relaxed, his hair too neat. That practiced grin that used to make people trust him faster than they should. Behind him, his mother, Barbara, in a camel coat, like she'd stepped out of a wealthy widow catalog. His sister Kendra, holding her phone up already, recording. His cousin Mark, the one who always laughed too loud and asked too many questions about money. And Dylan, he was carrying something. A manila folder, the kind people bring when they want a moment to feel official. My stomach didn't drop. It steadied, because the divorce had already taught me something important. When someone shows up with paperwork and confidence, they're either about to tell the truth or sell a lie. I set the mug down gently, as if sound itself could provoke them. Then I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped onto the porch like I owned every inch of air between us, because I did. "Morning," Dylan called, voice bright, almost cheerful. "Hope we're not interrupting." Barbara didn't wait. She swept forward, chin lifted, eyes scanning my porch like she was inspecting a rental property. "This is the day," she said, as if announcing a holiday. "We're here to take care of the transition." Kendra smiled without warmth. "Don't worry, Megan. We'll keep it civil. My name is Megan Hart, or it used to be. Now, legally, I was Megan Rowe again, 36, a project manager for a medical device company, the kind of job that teaches you to smile while people try to push deadlines, budgets, and responsibility onto you. The kind of job that trains you for families like Dylan's. We had been divorced for exactly 41 days. And for 41 days, I had been rebuilding my life in silence, while Dylan, apparently, had been planning a parade. "I don't understand," I said, keeping my voice low, calm. "What transition?" Dylan lifted the folder. "The house, Meg." He said it like a joke, like it was obvious. "We agreed in the settlement," he continued, flipping the folder open with a flourish. "You keep your retirement, I keep the property. We're here to finalize the move out." Barbara stepped closer. "Boxes, keys, garage remote. We'll do a walkthrough." Mark whistled softly. "Place looks even better in daylight." Kendra tilted her phone toward my face. "Say hi. This is just for documentation." I looked at Dylan, and I felt something cold and familiar move through my chest. Not fear. Recognition. This was what he did. He didn't fight you head on. He built a stage, hired an audience, and tried to shame you into surrendering. I took a slow breath. Then I said the simplest thing in the world. "No." For a second, everyone just stared. Barbara blinked, as if the word didn't belong in her vocabulary. Dylan's smile held, but it tightened at the corners. "What do you mean, no?" he asked softly, like I was a child being difficult. "I mean," I said, voice steady, "you're not coming in, and you're not taking anything." He laughed once, short, sharp. "Megan, don't do this." Barbara's voice turned syrupy. Sweetheart, we all want this to be smooth. Don't embarrass yourself. Kendra whispered to her phone, not even trying to hide it. She's refusing. This is wild. Dylan tapped the folder. The deed's in my name. The mortgage. Stop, I said. Just one word. And I watched Dylan's eyes flicker, because he heard something in my tone he hadn't heard before. A lack of pleading, a lack of negotiation, a closed door. I stepped down one stair so we were closer. Close enough for him to see that I was not shaking. Dylan, I said, if you came here to start a scene, you picked the wrong house. Barbara scoffed. Oh, it's the right house. It's been in our family's plans for years. That line, that specific line, it made me smile, just slightly, because it told me exactly what had happened. Barbara had convinced herself this house was their reward, their trophy, their return on investment for tolerating me during the marriage. And Dylan, he had fed the fantasy until it felt real. I nodded once, like I was listening. Then I looked straight at Dylan. Call your attorney, I said, right now. He hesitated. Do it, I repeated. Put him on speaker. Kendra laughed. Look at her acting like she's the lawyer. Mark leaned in, enjoying this. Yeah, Meg, you got some secret law degree now? Dylan exhaled like I was exhausting. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed with a smug little shake of his head. I watched his thumb. I watched the screen, and I waited. Because I already knew what his attorney was going to say. It took 3 rings, then a voice. Professional, clipped, mildly annoyed. Coulson and Avery, this is Brent. Dylan's posture straightened. Brent, it's Dylan Hart. I'm at the house. Megan's refusing to move out. There was a pause, not a dramatic pause, a real one. The kind where someone scrolls through files and realizes they've stepped into something they don't fully understand. Dylan, Brent said slowly, why are you at the property? Because it's mine, Dylan replied. It's in the settlement. We're here for the handoff. She's Dylan, Brent interrupted, voice sharper. Did you receive the amended documents I emailed you last week? Barbara's head tilted. Kendra's phone lowered a fraction. Dylan frowned. Amended documents? No. I saw an email, but you didn't sign them, Brent said, and now there was no patience left. You didn't acknowledge them, and you definitely weren't authorized to attempt possession today. My porch felt very still. Even the street sounded quieter. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. What are you talking about? He demanded. Brent's sigh crackled through the speaker. The property transfer was not completed. The deed is not solely in your name. And given the trust structure... Barbara stepped forward, eyes hard. What trust? Brent paused. Who is this? Dylan's voice went tight. My mother, Barbara Hart. There was another pause. Then Brent said something that made Dylan's face go pale in real time. Mrs. Hart, he said carefully, this matter is not appropriate for discussion on a speakerphone with multiple parties present. Barbara's nostrils flared. You work for my son. You will answer me. Then speak to me privately, Brent replied. Barbara leaned toward Dylan's phone like she could intimidate the sound waves. But Dylan didn't hand it to her, because Dylan already knew. If the lawyer didn't want an audience, it meant the story was about to change. And Dylan hated when the story changed. I watched him swallow. What trust structure? Dylan asked again, slower now. Brent's voice cooled. Dylan, stop. Leave the property, today, immediately. Do not engage. Do not attempt entry. Do not threaten her. And do not bring family members to the location again. Kendra whispered, barely audible. "Oh my God." Mark muttered, "What the hell is this?" Barbara's face turned a dangerous shade of pink. Dylan's jaw clenched. Then he did what he always did when he felt cornered. He turned on me. "This is you," he snapped, pointing. "You did something. You're hiding something." I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. I stepped closer. "You want the truth?" I said softly, and Dylan's eyes locked on mine, like prey watching the hunter's hands. "The truth," I continued, "is that you didn't lose this house in the divorce." His brows knit. "What? You lost it," I said, "the moment you tried to use it against me." Barbara's voice cut in, sharp and shrill. "This is ridiculous. This house was purchased during the marriage. He's entitled—" "Barbara," I said, without raising my voice, "you're entitled to go back to your car." She stared at me like she couldn't believe I'd spoken to her that way. And that's when I saw it clearly. Barbara didn't think I was a person. I was a temporary obstacle. A phase Dylan went through. A body that stood between her family and their idea of what they deserved. Dylan stabbed at the phone again. "Brent, what is she talking about? What trust?" Brent sounded like he was choosing each word like it was fragile glass. "Dylan," he said, "I advised you 2 years ago, when you refinanced." I watched Dylan flinch. Ah, there it was. Refinanced. The secret he thought I'd never fully understand. Because he'd done it in a fog of signatures, and it's better for our future. And I had been too exhausted from work, too trusting, too distracted to read every line. The refinance wasn't for us. It was for him. It was for his gambling-shaped hole he kept pretending was business. Brent continued, that the documentation included a protective ownership layer at Mrs. Hart, at Megan's request. Barbara snapped, "At her request?" I kept my face still. But inside, I felt the memory unfold like a file drawer sliding open. 2 years ago, I had started noticing things. Late-night work calls that weren't work, withdrawals that didn't match receipts, a sudden obsession with cash flow. And one night, when Dylan thought I was asleep, I heard him whispering in the kitchen, Just 1 more week, Mom. I'm close. I can fix it. Fix it." The favorite word of men who break things quietly. The next morning, I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I did something else. I called my friend Lila. Lila was an estate planner, not the glamorous kind. The kind who deals in worst-case scenarios, paperwork, and reality. I told her everything. And Lila said one sentence that changed my life. "If someone is reckless, protect what keeps you alive." That's what the house was. Not a trophy, a roof, stability, a place I could breathe, a place I could leave if I needed to. And I did need to. So I asked Lila what protection looked like, and she told me, not in dramatic terms, in calm, clean legal steps. A living trust, a structure that didn't hide anything, but made ownership harder to bully. Especially if the other spouse was irresponsible. Especially if the other spouse tried to weaponize the asset. Especially if the other spouse refinanced without full transparency. I had sat at our dining table, pen in hand, listening to Lila's careful explanations. Dylan had been in the garage that day, working on something. He didn't ask what I was signing, because Dylan never cared about details unless they benefited him. He trusted that I was the one who managed the boring parts of life. He trusted that I would keep being the foundation while he played in the sky. And Lila, she made sure the foundation had steel inside it. Back on the porch, Dylan's eyes widened as pieces collided in his head. The trust, he said slowly, as if tasting the word. You put the house in a trust? Partially, I said, legally, properly, with disclosure. Barbara exploded. You snake. I didn't flinch. Dylan snapped into anger again, because anger was easier than shame. You can't do that without me, he barked. I didn't, I replied. You signed the documents. Twice. He stared like I'd slapped him. Brent's voice was still on the line, awkward now, like a man realizing he was listening to a family fire. Dylan, Brent said, you need to hang up and call me back privately. But Dylan didn't hang up, because Dylan was panicking. What about the settlement? Dylan demanded. The judge, we agreed. I tilted my head. We agreed, I said, to what you believed was true. Barbara's lips curled. You're playing games. No, I said quietly. I'm ending them. Kendra's phone trembled slightly. She was still recording. But now it wasn't for documentation. Now it was because she could feel a scandal forming. And scandals are currency to people like Kendra. Mark scratched his jaw, suddenly less amused. So, who owns it? I looked at him. Then I looked back at Dylan, and I answered with a calmness that felt like clicking a lock. I do. Silence, not movie silence, real silence. Barbara's mouth opened, but nothing came out at first, like her brain couldn't compute the idea. Dylan's face drained, then his expression twisted. Because when a man like Dylan loses control, he doesn't accept it. He tries to take it back. He stepped closer, 1 foot on my bottom porch step, like he was testing the boundary. You think you can just steal it? He hissed. I didn't move. I didn't step back. I just held his eyes. Step off my property, I said, even softer than before. Right now. Barbara spat. Or what? I finally let a small piece of my patience show. Or, I said, the next person you'll be speaking to won't be a lawyer. Dylan scoffed. You're going to call the cops? I nodded once. If you make me. And that's when Dylan did the thing that still makes my skin crawl when I remember it. He smiled. Not his charming smile. The other one. The one that used to appear in arguments late at night, when he thought he had found the weak spot. You won't, he said. You never do. My throat tightened just for a second, because he was right. Old Megan didn't call anyone. Old Megan cleaned up quietly. Old Megan feared being seen as dramatic. Old Megan feared rocking the boat. But the divorce had burned that version of me down, and in her place, there was someone calmer, someone colder, someone who finally understood that peace isn't something you beg for. It's something you enforce. I took out my phone, unlocked it, and with my thumb, I dialed 911. Dylan's smile fell. Barbara froze. Kendra's eyes widened. She angled her phone toward my screen like she couldn't believe I was doing it. The operator answered quickly. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my voice steady. I have multiple people on my property, I said, refusing to leave. I have documentation that I'm the homeowner. I'm requesting an officer for trespassing. Dylan's face changed in stages. Shock, then anger, then something else. Fear. Because fear is what happens when a bully realizes the rules still apply to him. Barbara lunged toward me, hand raised like she might snatch the phone. Dylan grabbed her arm. Mom, stop. He didn't grab her to protect me. He grabbed her because he knew if she touched me, their problem would become criminal, Kendra whispered. This is insane. Mark backed up half a step, suddenly wanting distance from the blast radius. The operator asked me questions, my address, descriptions, whether anyone had weapons. No, I said, eyes on Dylan. Just intimidation. Dylan snapped, "We're leaving, we're leaving." But he didn't move yet. He just stared at me like he was trying to memorize the shape of my defiance. Then he leaned close, voice low enough that only I could hear. "This isn't over," he murmured. "You can't win forever." I looked him straight in the face and gave him the most honest answer I'd ever given him. "I don't need forever," I whispered back. "I just need today." And something in his eyes flickered, because he understood what that meant. It meant I wasn't fighting to punish him. I was fighting to survive him. They retreated to their cars in a messy cluster of anger and embarrassment. Barbara got in the SUV like she was stepping into a throne, slamming the door hard enough to shake the mirrors. Kendra's phone stayed up until the last second, catching every angle like she was hoping for a viral clip that would make her feel powerful again. Dylan lingered by the driver's side door, still gripping the folder. He lifted it slightly, like it might shield him. Then he said, louder now, for everyone to hear, "You're going to regret this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step forward. I simply said, "Drive safe." And he hated that, because there is nothing more humiliating to an angry person than calm. They drove away in a line. The street returned to quiet. My porch returned to sunlight, and my hands finally started to tremble. Not because I was scared of them, because my body was catching up to what my mind had already decided. I went back inside, closed the door, and locked it. Then I leaned my forehead against the wood and let out one breath that felt like it had been trapped for years. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. It was the opening act. Because Dylan didn't just want the house. Dylan wanted the narrative. He wanted to be the man who took back what was his. And when he couldn't do it in the driveway, he tried to do it in public. By Monday, my phone was buzzing with messages from the numbers I didn't recognize. A cousin, an aunt, a family friend I hadn't spoken to since my wedding. The tone was always the same. Confused concern, polite accusation. "Hey, Megan, Dylan says you're refusing to follow the court order. Is everything okay? We heard you're keeping him from his property. Be careful. People don't like when women get greedy." Greedy, that word. It always comes out when a woman refuses to be stolen from quietly. Then the email arrived. Subject line, notice of demand, possession. From Dylan's attorney, not Brent, a different name, a bigger firm, a more aggressive tone. It was a bluff wrapped in legal language. It claimed Dylan had immediate rights to the property, demanded I vacate within 10 business days, and threatened expedited action. I read it once, then twice. Then I forwarded it to Lila, and Lila responded with exactly what I needed. A single sentence. "Good. Now we end this." 2 days later, we sat in Lila's office downtown. Glass walls, clean furniture, the smell of expensive coffee and paper. Lila was 40, sharp-eyed, hair always pulled back like she didn't have time for nonsense. She laid my file on the table. "Dylan thinks the trust is a trick," she said. "He's going to try to get a judge to unwind it." My heart thudded. "Can he?" I asked. Lila's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "He can try," she said, "but he has a problem." "What problem?" Lila tapped a page and slid it toward me. On it was a date, a signature, Dylan's signature, and a second line beneath it, notarized. Lila looked at me. He signed acknowledgments. He waived objections. He agreed in writing that the trust protected the marital residence from unilateral disposal. I exhaled, shaky. So he can't... He can still file, she cut in. People file nonsense all the time, but that's not his real move. My stomach tightened again. Then what is? Lila leaned back slightly, eyes calm. He's going to claim you committed fraud, she said. The room felt colder. Fraud, I repeated. He'll say you hid the trust, that you tricked him, that you manipulated paperwork while he wasn't informed. I swallowed. But he was informed. Yes, Lila said. But Dylan doesn't need the truth. He needs a story that gives him leverage. And then Lila said the sentence that made my spine stiffen. He's also going to use something else. What? Lila's eyes held mine. He's going to use your reputation. I stared. Lila continued softly. Dylan's family is already spreading a narrative that you're unstable, that you're vindictive, that you're trying to ruin him. A bitter laugh escaped me. He ruined himself. True, Lila said. But public perception isn't about truth. It's about repetition. My fingers curled under the table because I could already feel it. The pressure, the invisible crowd, the whisper campaign. This is what Dylan wanted, to exhaust me, to make the house feel like a burden, to make me choose peace by surrendering. I looked at Lila. So what do we do? Lila's voice was calm, almost gentle. We show receipts, she said, and we bait him into revealing what he's hiding. I blinked. Bait him? Lila nodded. Dylan has a secret. It's bigger than the house. My throat tightened. The gambling? Lila's eyes narrowed. Not just that. She slid another document toward me, a refinance statement, numbers highlighted in yellow, a line item that made my breath catch. Home equity cash out, $180,000. I stared at it, because Dylan had told me the refinance was for a lower rate. He had said, it's just paperwork. He had said, it's smart. I looked up at Lila, voice barely above a whisper. He took out equity, I said. Lila nodded, without fully disclosing to you where it went. My stomach turned. Where did it go? I asked. Lila's gaze didn't move. That, she said, is what we're going to find out. And when we do, she leaned forward slightly. Dylan won't be able to threaten you with court. I swallowed hard, because suddenly I understood. This wasn't about my house being a prize. It was about my house being a bank. And Dylan had already robbed it. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every headlight outside felt like a threat. And in the dark, my mind replayed the driveway scene like a loop. Barbara's entitlement, Kendra's camera, Dylan's confidence, and the moment it cracked. I kept seeing Dylan's face when Brent said trust structure. That flash of panic, that sudden sense that something was slipping beyond his grip. I realized something then. Dylan didn't just want the house because he wanted to live in it. He wanted it because he needed it. Needed it the way drowning people need air. Needed it because without it, his lies would be exposed. And people like Dylan would rather take your home than admit they've been living inside a con. The next week unfolded like a slow storm. A process server showed up at my office. Not dramatic. Just a man in a polo shirt with a clipboard and a neutral expression. He handed me papers in front of coworkers. Ms. Rowe? He asked. Yes. You've been served. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I thanked him. And when I walked back into my building, I could feel eyes on me. Not cruel eyes, curious ones, the kind that wonder what you did wrong. Because people always assume the woman did something. I sat at my desk, opened the folder, and read. Dylan had filed an emergency motion. Emergency. as if his inability to control me was a natural disaster. He claimed the trust was fraudulent. He claimed I withheld material information. He claimed I was interfering with his rightful property access. And then, at the bottom, he requested attorney's fees. Of course, he wanted to punish me financially for resisting. I forwarded everything to Lila, and Lila replied within 10 minutes. Perfect. That was it. No reassurance, no sympathy, just perfect. Because to Lila, this wasn't frightening. It was a mistake Dylan had just made on paper. 2 days later, we were in King County Superior Court. Not a dramatic courtroom with shouting. A clean room with fluorescent lighting and tired benches. The kind of place where life-changing decisions happen in business casual silence. Dylan sat across the aisle. Suit, polished shoes, that same confident posture. Barbara sat behind him like a queen watching her soldier. Kendra was there too, of course, whispering to someone, probably typing a play-by-play to her friends. And Dylan's new attorney, a woman with a sharp jawline and the kind of voice that could cut glass. She looked at me like I was an inconvenience, not a person. Lila sat beside me, calm as ever. She leaned toward my ear. Remember, she whispered, let them perform. We're here for facts. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat, and the hearing began. Dylan's attorney spoke first. She painted a picture of me as a schemer, a woman who had surreptitiously placed marital property into a trust to deprive Mr. Hart of his rightful interest. She used words like deceit, manipulation, bad faith. And when she finished, she turned slightly toward the judge as if offering a gift. Dylan looked at me with that familiar smile, the I'm going to break you smile. Barbara nodded faintly, satisfied. Then the judge looked at Lila. Ms. Santos, he asked. Lila stood, and the air changed, because Lila didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. She didn't argue. She simply opened a binder and began placing reality on the table like bricks. Your Honor, Lila said evenly, the trust was disclosed. The documentation was executed by both parties, notarized, recorded. The petitioner is asking this court to erase his own signatures because he now regrets them. Dylan's smile twitched. Lila continued, flipping a page. We have acknowledgments signed by Mr. Hart. We have the refinance disclosures with his initials. We have communications referencing the trust structure. Dylan's attorney stiffened. Objection. The judge lifted a hand. Let her finish. Lila's gaze didn't move from the judge, and she said, We have evidence this petition is not filed in good faith. That line landed like a stone. The judge leaned slightly forward. What evidence? He asked. Lila didn't answer immediately. She turned, and for the first time, she looked directly at Dylan. Mr. Hart, she said calmly, did you take a cash out of $180,000 against the marital home in February of 2 years ago? Dylan's head jerked. His attorney whipped toward him. Barbara's eyes widened. Kendra's phone lifted instinctively. Dylan snapped. That's not relevant. Lila tilted her head. It's relevant if you're claiming you were deprived of the property while simultaneously extracting equity from it. The judge's voice sharpened. Answer the question. Dylan swallowed. His face flushed. I refinanced, he said. Yes. Lila nodded, as if confirming a checkbox. And where did the $180,000 go, Mr. Hart? She asked. Dylan's mouth opened, and for 1 second I saw it. The truth, trapped behind his teeth like an animal that didn't want to come out. His attorney leaned in, whispering urgently, But the judge was watching. The room was watching. Barbara was staring at him like a blade. Dylan cleared his throat. It went, he said carefully, to business expenses. Lila's eyebrows lifted slightly. Which business? She asked. Dylan's eyes darted. His attorney cut in quickly. Your Honor, this is outside the scope. Lila didn't move. The judge didn't look away. And then, the judge asked the question Dylan didn't expect. Mr. Hart, the judge said, is that business currently registered? Dylan froze. Barbara's lips parted. Kendra's phone shook. Because if the answer was no, then business expenses was just a suit covering a lie. Dylan's voice went thin. It's a private venture, he said. The judge's eyes narrowed. Lila's voice stayed calm. A private venture, she repeated. Is that the same private venture referenced in the bank's fraud flag report? Silence. Sharp. Immediate. Dylan's attorney turned fully toward Lila, face stiff. What report? She demanded. Lila looked at the judge. Your Honor, we received a notice from the lender, sent to my client, regarding suspicious transactions linked to the refinance deposit. My heart thudded. I hadn't known that part. Lila hadn't told me she had that. She had held it, like a knife in her sleeve. The judge's expression changed. He looked at Dylan with a new kind of focus. Not as a divorcing spouse, as a potential problem. Mr. Hart, the judge said slowly, did you use refinance proceeds for activities that may violate lending disclosures? Dylan's face went gray. Barbara's hand flew to her mouth. Kendra whispered, Oh my God. Dylan's attorney stood quickly. Your Honor, I request a brief recess. The judge held up a hand. No, he said. We're not recessing until I understand what's happening. Dylan's eyes locked on his attorney like he was begging her to save him. But she couldn't. Because this wasn't a divorce fight anymore. This was the court noticing smoke and wondering what was burning. Lila's voice stayed gentle, almost polite. Your Honor, she said, we believe Mr. Hart's emergency motion is a strategic attempt to pressure my client into releasing the property because he is under financial scrutiny tied to the home's equity extraction. Dylan snapped, voice cracking. That's not true. The judge stared at him. Then he looked at the papers again. And in that moment, I realized something. Dylan hadn't come to court to win. He had come to intimidate. But intimidation doesn't work when facts are documented. The judge exhaled. Then he said the words that made my knees almost give out. Motion denied, he said. Dylan blinked. Barbara made a sound like someone had slapped her. Kendra's phone dipped. The judge continued, voice firm. And, he added, given the financial allegations raised today, I am ordering both parties to produce full refinancing disclosures and related bank statements. If there is evidence of misrepresentation, this court will refer the matter appropriately. Dylan's attorney went rigid. Dylan looked like he couldn't breathe. Barbara turned toward Dylan, her face twisting, not with pity, with rage. Because in that single sentence, Dylan didn't just lose the house. He exposed himself. The hearing ended quickly after that. Everyone stood. The judge left. And suddenly the room was full of movement, whispers, papers being shoved into briefcases. Dylan's attorney grabbed him by the elbow and pulled him towards the exit like she was dragging a liability. Barbara followed, hissing. What did you do? Kendra trailed behind, eyes wide, still recording until Dylan whirled and snapped, Turn it off. For the first time, Kendra obeyed. I sat there for a second, frozen. Lila touched my arm lightly. It's done, she said. But her voice wasn't celebratory. It was cautious, because she knew what I was just starting to understand. Dylan wasn't going to accept this quietly. He was going to try something else. Outside the courthouse, the air was cold and sharp. I pulled my coat tighter, exhaling a breath that turned to mist. Lila walked beside me, calm. "Do I need to be worried?" I asked softly. Lila didn't sugarcoat. "Be alert," she said. "People who lose control sometimes try to take it back in ugly ways." My stomach clenched, and right then, like the universe was punctuating her warning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it, then answered. A man's voice, low, unfamiliar. "Is this Megan Rowe?" he asked. "Yes." He hesitated. Then he said, "My name is Aaron Pierce. I'm with the lender's risk department." My blood went cold. He continued, voice controlled. "We're calling regarding the refinance deposit from 2 years ago. We have questions about where the proceeds were transferred." I swallowed. "You need to talk to Dylan." Aaron's voice softened slightly. "We tried. He's not returning calls." Of course he wasn't. Aaron continued, "Ms. Rowe, you were listed as a co-borrower at the time. If funds were used in ways that violate disclosures, you may be exposed." My hand tightened around the phone. "Expose how?" I asked, voice still calm but tight at the edges. Aaron hesitated. "Potentially, you may be contacted by federal compliance." Federal. That word doesn't play. I closed my eyes. Dylan didn't just try to take my house. He tried to use it as a shield for whatever mess he created. And now, that mess was knocking on my door. I opened my eyes. Lila was watching me, reading my face like a document. I pulled the phone slightly away and covered the mic. "Layla," I whispered, "it's the lender. Risk department." Lila's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. She leaned in. I returned to the call. "Aaron," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I'm represented by counsel. You can send all inquiries to my attorney. Her name is Lila Santos." Aaron exhaled, relieved. "Thank you. We will." I ended the call, and for a moment, I just stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the line between divorce drama and serious consequences blur. Lila's voice was soft. "You see now?" she asked. I nodded slowly. Dylan wasn't trying to move into my house. He was trying to move his mess into it. And the worst part was that Barbara probably knew. Maybe not the details, but the shape of it, the scent of it. Because Barbara's kind of rage, the kind that showed up in the courtroom, doesn't come from surprise. It comes from realizing her son's downfall might splash on her. That night, I pulled every file I had. Old emails, mortgage documents, bank notifications I'd ignored because Dylan told me, "It's handled." I sat at my kitchen table with the same chipped mug, now cold coffee inside it, and I read. I read like my life depended on it, because it did. And around midnight, I found something. An email from 2 years ago. Subject line, transfer confirmation. A transfer. From the refinance deposit to an account I didn't recognize. The description was short, too short. Pierce Hill Consulting. My throat tightened. Pierce Hill. Aaron Pierce. Risk Department. The name wasn't a coincidence. My hands went icy. I forwarded the email to Lila. Within 5 minutes, she called me. "Megan," she said quietly, "don't panic." "I'm not," I lied. Lila's voice stayed controlled. "That account," she said, "isn't consulting. It's a payment processor." My stomach dropped. "For what?" I whispered. Lila inhaled slowly. "For an online betting network," she said. The room went silent. Not because the world stopped, because my mind did. Dylan, the refinance, the cash out, the private venture. It wasn't business. It was gambling. But not casual. Not weekend poker with friends. Something bigger. Something that needed $180,000. I stared at the email until the words blurred. And then I heard Dylan's voice in my memory. Just one more week, Mom. I can fix it. He wasn't fixing a business. He was chasing losses. Lila's voice cut through. This, she said softly, is why he wants the house. He's not trying to live in it. I swallowed, voice rough. He's trying to cover it. Yes, Lila said. And now that he failed, he may try to blame you. My pulse thudded. How? Lila's answer was immediate. He will claim you authorized it, she said. He will claim you benefited. He will claim you knew. I felt nausea rise, because Dylan didn't just steal money. He stole the safety of my name. And that was the moment I stopped seeing Dylan as an ex-husband who was angry. I saw him as what he really was. A man who would burn your life down to keep his own illusion standing. 2 days later, Dylan showed up again. Not with his family, not with a folder, alone, at night. I was taking out the trash when I saw him at the end of the driveway, standing in the shadow of the streetlight, like a ghost who still believed he belonged. My heart jumped, but I didn't step back. I set the trash bag down slowly, and I kept my voice calm. What do you want? I asked. Dylan stepped forward, hands open like he was harmless. Megan, he said, and his tone was softer now. Can we talk? I stared at him, because I could hear the new strategy in his voice. Not intimidation, charm, the old mask. He took another step. I didn't want it to go this way, he said. My mom, she got carried away. I didn't answer. He swallowed. There are bigger issues, he said quietly. I felt my spine stiffen. What issues? I asked. Dylan looked away briefly, as if searching for the right lie. Then he looked back at me with a face that tried to look wounded. The bank, he said. They're calling. They're asking questions. You're listed too. My stomach turned. So he knew. He knew the risk was reaching for me. And he was here, not to apologize, to negotiate my silence. I handled it, he said quickly. I can fix it, but I need time. I stared at him. And, I said. Dylan stepped closer, voice lowering. If you sign a simple agreement, he said, just something that says you won't pursue claims, and you'll release the house. I laughed once, a small sound, not amused, disbelieving. You want me to give you the house, I said, so you can hide behind it. Dylan's face tightened. No, he said too fast. I want us to move on. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said the sentence that made his mask crack. You used my future, I said quietly, as gambling money. His eyes widened. He froze. What? He began. Don't, I said softly. Don't pretend. I saw the transfer. Dylan's face changed. The charm drained. The fear flashed. Then, anger. You went digging, he hissed. I nodded once. Yes. He stepped forward suddenly, voice sharp. You don't understand how close I was to fixing it. Fixing it. That word again? I felt something inside me settle, a final click, because he still believed his problem was just bad luck. Not his choices, not his lying, not the fact that he was willing to drag me under with him. I took a slow breath. Then I said, very calmly, you need to leave. Dylan's jaw clenched. Megan, leave, I repeated. He took another step, eyes hard. If you don't sign, he said, voice low, threatening. I'll make sure you get pulled into this. You think the court saved you? The bank won't. There it was, the real Dylan. Not the charming husband, not the confident ex, the man who would weaponize consequences. And the moment he said it, I stopped feeling fear, because fear needs uncertainty. And now I was certain. He was dangerous, not with fists, with paperwork, with lies, with pressure. I looked at him and held his gaze. Dylan, I said softly, if I go down, I'm taking you with me. His eyes flickered. I continued, voice steady as stone. I have every document, I said, every signature, every email, every transfer, every lie you told. Dylan swallowed, and for the first time that night, he hesitated. I took a step closer, not aggressive, just firm. And I already spoke to the lender, I said. They're contacting counsel, not you. His face went pale, because he realized his leverage was gone. He stared at me like he was trying to find the old Megan in my eyes, the one who would soften, the one who would feel sorry, the one who would rescue him. He didn't find her. He found someone else, someone who finally understood that saving him meant drowning myself. Dylan's voice went tight. You're really doing this? I nodded. Yes. He shook his head slowly, like he couldn't believe it. Then he leaned in and said one last thing. Fine, he whispered. Then I'll let my mom handle you. And with that, he turned and walked away into the night like a threat wearing a man's body. I stood there until his car disappeared. Then I went inside, locked the door, checked every window. And for the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel relieved. I felt prepared because I knew what was coming next. Barbara. And Barbara didn't come with charm. She came with fire. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:12 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. Barbara's voice hit my ear like a slap. You little witch, she hissed. Do you know what you've done? I kept my voice calm. Good morning, Barbara, I said. Don't you good morning me, she snapped. Dylan is in trouble because of you. I exhaled slowly. No, I said. Dylan is in trouble because of Dylan. Barbara's voice rose. He refinanced for your lifestyle, for your comfort, for that fancy kitchen you needed. My lifestyle? I repeated softly. Barbara didn't pause. You think you're so smart, she snarled, hiding behind paperwork. But let me tell you something, Megan. I cut in gently. This call is being recorded, I said. Silence. Then Barbara's breath turned jagged. You're bluffing, she spat. I'm not, I said calmly. Continue. Barbara went quiet for a second. Then she spoke again, slower now, controlled. You want to destroy my son? She said. Fine. But you won't do it alone. My stomach tightened. What are you saying? I asked. Barbara's voice turned syrupy again, like poison wearing perfume. I'm saying, she said, I have friends, people who know people. And if you think a little trust document makes you untouchable, she paused. You're about to learn how the world really works. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, very softly, Thank you. Barbara hissed. For what? For putting that on record, I said. And I hung up. My hands were steady, because I knew something Barbara didn't. People who threaten you out loud are giving you evidence. And evidence is power. That afternoon, Lila filed a protective order request. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just a quiet legal boundary. And then she sent the recording of Barbara's call to the lender's investigator. Because suddenly, this wasn't just a divorce dispute. It was intimidation linked to financial misconduct. and lenders do not play when they smell coordinated pressure. 3 weeks later, Dylan's private venture collapsed in a way he couldn't hide. Accounts frozen, calls unanswered. And then, one evening, I opened my mailbox and found a letter. Not from Dylan, not from Barbara. From the U.S. Attorney's Office. My hands finally trembled again, but not from fear, from the strange, sharp relief of seeing the truth arrive in an official envelope. Lila read it with me on speaker. Then she said quietly, "They're investigating," she said. I sat down slowly. "And me?" I whispered. Lila's voice softened. "You're a witness," she said. "Not a target, because you did the right thing." I stared at the wall, and in that moment, I realized the twist wasn't that I won the house. The twist was that the house had never been the real prize. The prize was my name, my clean record, my future, the thing Dylan tried to gamble without my consent. And he failed, not because I got lucky, but because I got smart, because I stopped trying to be liked, because I stopped trying to keep the peace with people who thrive on chaos. Months later, when everything settled, I was standing in the same kitchen, same sunlight, same chipped mug, when my phone buzzed with a final message from Dylan. One line. No apology, no explanation, just bitterness. "You think you're better than me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back one sentence. "I'm not better. I'm free." And I blocked his number. That night, I walked through my house slowly, not as a woman defending territory, as a woman reclaiming space. I touched the wall near the doorway where I used to measure time by arguments. I looked at the living room window where I used to watch Dylan pull into the driveway and feel my stomach tense. And I realized the house felt different, not because the furniture changed, because the power did, because the story did, because the person inside it did. Dylan and his family thought the house was something you could take if you arrived loud enough, with enough cars, enough paperwork, enough witnesses. They thought ownership was a performance. But the truth is, ownership is quiet. It's signatures, it's records, it's boundaries. It's the moment you stop asking permission to be safe. And if there's a lesson in what happened to me, it's this. When someone tries to take your home, they're rarely just taking a building. They're testing whether you still believe you deserve to stand your ground. So stand. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your hands tremble afterward. Even if people call you greedy. Because the moment you protect what keeps you alive, you don't just keep a house. You keep yourself.